Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 to 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory. Great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. And a terrific service department, whether it's quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. It is always a pleasure to be joined by the outstanding John Sauber from the Center Daily Times. John, welcome back.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. Always appreciate it.
I will start with the on the field or on the court stuff, and that is the House settlement. The original language of the House settlement was that the two sides had until June 6th, in other words, Friday, to finalize the settlement or the case would go to trial. Monday, Judge Claudia Wilkin granted a motion to extend the deadline to June 27th. How much angst do you think there is right now among college administrators because July 1 is on the horizon?
I would guess a lot, especially because that deadline doesn't, indicate a whole lot of time between, that deadline and that July 1 date, right? Like that is, this feels a little bit like a last-ditch effort before it would potentially have to go to trial. But yeah, I think most administrators are basically begging for finality here, right? They just want to know exactly what this is going to look like, how things are going to shape out moving forward, and there's chance that things could change drastically, especially with roster set, all that stuff. Like everything could change if the terms of the settlement get shifted at all.
All right, so. Well, at least update everybody on that, so we did that. So before we get to football, I want to get to basketball. Yannick Niederhauser, John, when he went down to Miami at the beginning of April, and he shot the ball well down there at one of the pre-draft camps, you're like, okay. And I remember I said to Pat Flannery, I said, at the very least, he's going to get a G League Elite invite. Then, when he got that, I saw the competition of the other three teams at center, and I thought he's going to crush that group. So, his decision to stay in the draft, and then the domino of what it means for Penn State.
Yeah, I think this is. I think it's the right decision, right? I think he's older than people realize, just because he was playing overseas and was at Northern Illinois. And I think the time is right for him to strike on kind of his stock, especially because, as you mentioned, especially once he got the G League invite, you kind of knew it was over for Penn State a little bit, just because he's such an impressive kid that the second teams talked with him, they were going to fall in love with him, and I think that happened in part two. And obviously, he was very impressive on the court, an unbelievable athlete that I think can probably step in right away, and depending on what team takes him, could be a backup big or could be a third big. And be helpful. It's going to take him a long time to grow, but I think ultimately that is the right decision for him. But for Penn State, I know Mike Rhodes and his staff had contingencies in place, and they weren't exactly blindsided by this decision. But I think there's no doubt that this is damaging for this season, because this was going to be their best player, right? Like, I think he had a chance to be an All Big Ten player. If not, I say a chance. I think he probably would have been an All Big Ten player.
Sure.
And I think he had a chance to be one of the better bigs in the country. And now you're kind of not scrambling to replace that player, but the portal market has shifted. They're focusing on Europe, I think correctly so, because most of the guys in the United States have already committed, are already at new schools, and so they've had to kind of shift their focus. And I think they kind of have to hope that the guys they get from Europe are able to replace Conan Niederhauser. But I think it would be it would be unfair to expect them to replace that guy this late in the cycle, and kind of, I think, definitely shifts expectations a little bit for next season without him.
Yeah, they've been working on the Europe thing, though, for a while, before Yannick even declared for the draft. They were working on Europe. One thing about European players is they will get here at the age of 19, but they're playing against men. So, like, if anybody wants to sit there and go, hey, I want to look at the stats, irrelevant. Okay?
Yeah.
They're playing against much older guys.
Those guys, I like to look at those U17 stats, the U20 stats. You know what I mean? Like, that's way more comparable to the level of competition they're going to be facing in the United States than any of the 30-year-old guys who've been playing for 12 years professionally overseas.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you have to keep in mind. They're not playing against. This is not the AAU, okay? They're not doing that. So if you want to sit there and go, I looked at his stats, they weren't impressive. I'm like, yo, man, I understand the game. Okay, this is not how they play it over there. Now, okay, so now let's get to football. I know it before the week is out, James, his staff, they'll have a chance to meet with players. Hey, what are you looking for at this time of the year?
Yeah, I think this is about, one, getting to the season healthy right now and in July and fall camp. Like, that's, especially for a team as good as Penn State, right? Like, you're a national title contender, potential preseason number one in the country. You want to get there, right? Like, you want to get to the season and kind of let things play out however they do, but at least be at full go when that time comes. But outside of that, I think it's, especially with the offense, I think this is the time of year where, Drew Aller and his receivers can kind of build that relationship that I think it was a little apparent last year that on the field they weren't always on the same page. I think players even mentioned it in post-game comments often that, there was a throw here or there where they just weren't on the same page, and that was why it may have looked like a misthrown ball, but it was really someone was in the wrong place, right? And I think this time of year is when those guys can go get those reps. They can just, whenever they want, they can go get on the field, work on routes, work on having that timing together. And I think that's going to be really important for a team that has essentially three new starting receivers, right? If Devontae Ross, Kyron Hudson, and Trevor Pena are as good, I think, as most people anticipate, that those guys are probably going to be your, if not starters, your highest rep receivers at least. And so I think this is the time of year where Aller and those guys can get out there and they can get those reps. But for us, we're meeting with James Franklin, the assistant coaches, on Thursday. I think it's about finding where their mentality is, right? Because I think it's closer than everyone realizes to the season. It was this is a slower time of year for us, and I realized that media days is in 6 weeks already, right? I think that I'm curious to hear about how they're kind of preparing, especially because you're slowly going to narrow that focus from the broad to the more finite things, the smaller things, in getting ready for an opponent.
What do you think it means and tells you maybe a story about a Kyron Hudson that when Drew Aller was in California doing workouts, that Hudson made sure every day he went over and worked out with Aller? What do you think? What does that tell you about him?
Oh, I think it's crucial, right? And I think it says a lot about what Kyron Hudson wants out of his Penn State experience, right? Like, he wants to go win games, and he wants to be a part of this offense, and that communication, that ability to kind of anticipate where each other's going to be or anticipate where the ball is going to be because you've run that route 500 times on a practice field is massive. And I think it says a lot about where the wide receiver room is now. I think that sets a really good example too, right, with the younger receivers in the room, so that in the future that is kind of the standard rather than maybe in 2-3 years we're not talking about wow, that's a great gesture by Hudson, and it's more of this is just what these guys do. And I think that's how you kind of set that tone and get that to be the standard moving forward.
John, what's the read you've had from people, and what's been your read on Trevor Pena transferring in from Syracuse?
Yeah, I think he is going to be a productive slot receiver for Penn State, right? I think I don't want to call the stats from last year misleading, but he was a high-volume target. There is and in a high-volume offense. And, I would anticipate that the volume will be a little lower at Penn State, but I still think he's going to be productive. I don't know that he's, a number one receiver, but I do think he's going to be a quality number two or reliable option for Drew Aller. Could be a red zone threat, especially in the middle of the field, to, kind of use that ability to separate and to give Drew Aller tight windows to throw the ball in those short areas. But yeah, I think he's going to be an upgrade for Penn State. I think he's going to be really helpful, and I think, as of now, I would anticipate, like I said, him being one of the starters and him being one of those guys that goes out there and helps create a baseline that maybe it didn't exist for the passing offense last year.
Yeah, and then there's Devontae Ross, who gets added into this mix as well. You had a chance to watch him during the spring. You had a chance to observe him in the blue-white game. What can he add?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely on the higher end of the scale for Devontae Ross. I think he could be a number one receiver for Penn State. I know people point to the Iowa game and the 3 touchdowns and everything, but you go back and look. Some of those were blown coverages and whatnot. But really, you look at the rest of the film from him. He's got the sort of short area quickness that isn't normal, right? Like it is not. It is an elite skill for him. He's not, a 4.25 40 guy, but he is fast enough to get open down the field. He's going to separate. He's really good in the open field. He makes players miss. He makes defenders, kind of look silly sometimes when they try and bring him down. I think he has a chance to be a true number one. I am very curious to see the ways that Andy Kotelnicki tries to get him involved in the offense this year. I'm not saying he's going to be doing the things that Tyler Warren does, but Tyler Warren was this shining example of what Kotelnicki can come up with, and I think Ross is going to be the beneficiary of that this season.
Another part, too, is that, look, he can return punts. He took one back 77 yards for a touchdown at one point in his career. He can possibly help out there as well.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be a game breaker for Penn State this year. And again, not to heap a ton of expectations on someone who hasn't taken a snap yet for Penn State in a real game, but that is kind of what I've seen. And then talking to people, there's some excitement about him.
All right. When you look at Elliott Washington, A.J. Harrison, Zakee Wheatley, what do they mean to what Jim Knowles wants to do?
I think they are going to be crucial, right? I think Washington, there's some versatility there because of the size and the strength that I would be curious to see kind of, we talked about earlier what we want to see this time of year, how Washington is used moving forward, because I do think he can be a high-end outside corner, but I also think he has the tools to move around in the secondary. Frankly, the same is true of Wheatley, someone who played corner before. Harris, to me, I said this last year that I had high expectations for him going into the season. I think he blew those out of the water. I think he has a chance to be a first-round pick in next year's draft. I think he might be the best player on the defense this year. Still think he can be a first-round pick and kind of continue taking steps forward as one of the best corners in the country. I think those three at the top kind of are going to not dictate how far this defense goes, because frankly, Knowles creates a ceiling and a floor that is very high, and I think they're going to be elite no matter what. But I think those guys in the biggest moments can make the biggest plays, and that's what you want if you're looking at a national title contender.
Okay, national title. When they're talking about expanding to 16, John, there's been a talk of, and the Big Ten has pushed this above all, but 4 automatic qualifiers, Big Ten, 4 automatic SEC, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, 1 group of 5, and then after that, open. Then at the Big Ten meetings, they talked about 5 conference champions, including a group of 5, and 11 wild cards. Is there a format you prefer and you think is best?
I know I'm very much alone on this. I would expand it to 24 or 32. Just give me more games. I know that is a selfish standpoint, but I think of those, I think, honestly, I think there's credence to going, 16 free-for-all. There's credence to going 16, and then, like you said, the 4-4, 2-2-1, and then the 7 left over. But yeah, I think if I had to pick, it would probably be just the conference champions and then a free-for-all, because part of the committee ranking is already going to favor Big Ten, SEC schools anyways, and so you'll see them littered throughout those, those top 16 schools. But yeah, I'm a big proponent of more football the better. I know that's obviously not the only consideration here. Their player safety and everything is more important than that, but Yeah, the more they do with this, I wouldn't be surprised if it expanded again past 16. But as long as they get to 16, I feel comfortable saying that the deserving national champion, if we want to call them that, will be in that field, and I think that's what matters, right? Like, I think the more you expand, you're inevitably going to have, blowouts in round one. People like to point to the blowouts in the round one of the playoff this year, but that happens in every sport. That's the playoffs. That's how they work, and there are upsets and everything. It's part of the fun of sports, and I'm all for more of it.
Well, in fact, if you look back at last year, say it were 16, it would have been 4 Big Tens, and I think it could have been as many as 6 SECs, based on that. So, I mean, the numbers would have worked out. I know because the SEC's pushed part of this. It still would have worked out in their favor. The other part of this is the idea of changing the Big Ten title game or the SEC title game to a play-in game, where if you do have the automatic qualifiers, do you have 4 play 5 to see who gets in? What's your thought on that possible change?
That goes back to the I'm all for it, the more fun, right? Like, I kind of like the idea of the Big Ten title game is the main event of a day, and it's, number 1 against number 2, and then 2 games leading up to that is 3 and 6 and 4 and 5, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it could be any combination. You could just stop it at just 4 and 5 and have the third team automatically get in. But I kind of like that idea as a de facto play-in. I think it would add a little more juice to conference championship weekend, as we found out this year. And I think a lot of years, it just doesn't impact the final rankings as much as I think people would probably hope, considering how much we play up conference title games. And so I think adding more value to that weekend is always going to be a good thing, and would be my guess for something they try to figure out in the future, right? Like, even if it's not in this round of negotiations for expansion, I would guess that something is done with conference title weekend to make it more exciting than it is right now.
Yeah, not only, it would be meaningful. To me, it would be the equivalent of Dayton. It would be like a first 4 is the way they would play that out.
You're never going to hear me complain about having more football or more basketball. I'm one of the few proponents for the 96 team field, I think, in the NCAA tournament.
Well, I know they're talking going to 72 or 76. I prefer 76, and the reason, John, is quite simple. You're eventually going to get there anyway. Just do it now.
I'm totally with you.
And I would go with a first 4 in Dayton like it is now, and I do a Western first 4.
See, I like that idea, because then you're giving more. I don't like the idea that this is just in Dayton anyways. I kind of would like that to be moved around a little bit. I wouldn't hate if that was also like a site in Indianapolis one year or Philadelphia one year, right? Like, but I like the idea of having an East Coast first 4 and a West Coast first 4.
Yeah, I'll say this about Dayton, and one of the reasons why it stays in Dayton, John, is they really support it. To their credit, it is a big deal to them that they have the first 4. And they sell that building out. The city embraces it. It's now become almost a mantra for something to say, hey, man, at least we can get to Dayton. I have to give them credit for that. I think I lost him there. Oh, there we go. I have to give him credit for that, John.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I think, the one thing I will say, though, imagine the first 4 in the Palestra, right? Like, imagine,
goodness gracious.
Let's this thing around a little bit.
Oh, no, see, and I think that's a great idea. To put it in one of the true cathedrals of basketball, I think it's an idea that would scream roots of basketball, and I think that's so important.
Yeah, and imagine all of the obnoxiously sweaty sports writers like myself in a place like the Palestra, in a place that seemingly never has proper ventilation. I would love it, personally.
And not only that, to do it in mid to late March, where it's possible it could get very, very warm in there.
Well, there was nothing better than the Penn State Palestra games than walking in from 0-degree weather to walking into a building that was 110 degrees and trying to shed as many layers as you could as quickly as possible.
Sir, it is always a pleasure. I thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate you.
All right. John Sauber, Center Daily Times, does a great job of covering Penn State, whether it's football, basketball, any sport. He throws his heart and soul into it. And we thank him for joining us on the show today. This half hour brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors. 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 with Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Now, when you look at Ford, Kia, and Hyundai, they all have great warranties and fabulous safety features. I can attest to that. I bought my Sunbury Motors vehicle a year ago. Between the warranties and the safety features, it's just, wow. Pre-owned inventory, they go over each one with a fine-tooth comb to make the buying experience so much easier. And the service department, quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all. At Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. On News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.